Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. We first make our habits and then our habits make us. John Dryden. 9. Simple steps. What is the smallest simple step I can take now? How do we start good habits or end bad ones? What daily routine will help me become limitless? You have a reason or purpose to do something. You have the necessary energy to do it. What is missing? A small simple step. S3. The tiniest action you can take to get you closer to a goal, one that requires minimal effort or energy over time. These become habits. That's the reason I've filled this book with the small simple steps called quick starts. Back in the 1920s, a Russian psychologist, Bluma Zygarnik, was sitting in a Viennese restaurant when she noticed that the waiters swirling around her in the busy eatery were highly efficient at remembering customers' orders while they were in process, but tended to forget who had what as soon as the orders were filled. Intrigued by this, she ran a study where she had people perform simple tasks while they were sometimes interrupted. Afterward, she queried participants about which tasks they remembered and which they did not. Finding that those who'd been interrupted were twice as likely to remember the things they'd been doing when they had been interrupted than the things they had been able to complete without interruption. She came to the conclusion, subsequently known as the Zygarnik effect, that uncompleted tasks create a level of tension that keeps the task at the front of our minds until it is completed. In all likelihood, you are familiar with this tension from your experience with procrastination. When you have something you know you need to do and you keep putting it off, it weighs on you, even making it more difficult to do anything else. Well, as long as this task goes uncompleted, what you need to do seems hard, or it seems less fun than the other things you could be doing, or it's gonna be uncomfortable, or you've simply convinced yourself that you have plenty of time to get to it later. We still struggle to complete tasks when we are clear on our vision for our lives and know who we wanna become. Why is it still so hard to act even when we have sustained motivation? One of the most significant reasons that people fail to act is that we feel overwhelmed by what we need to do. A project or a core chore might seem so big and time consuming that you can't imagine how you're ever gonna get it done. We look at the project in its entirety and immediately feel that the task at hand is too big, so we shut down or put it off. Incomplete tasks and procrastination often lead to frequent and unhelpful thought patterns, says psychologist Hassan Lifzing. These thoughts can impact on sleep, trigger anxiety symptoms, and further impact on a person's mental and emotional resources. Be kind to yourself. If you struggle to get something done with some amount of regularity, there's a good chance that you feel guilty about this and you beat yourself up over it. It's likely you give yourself a much harder time about it than is helpful. We already know that unfinished tasks create tension in your brain. You feel your guilt and shame on top of this. You're making it even harder to get a task done, and you're making yourself miserable. Feeling guilty when you're away from work, when you aren't in a position to do anything about it, is not helpful and can be painful. Writes Dr. Art Markman, a professor of psychology and marketing at University of Texas, Austin. It'll make you feel worse about your job in general and spoil time that you could be spending with friends, family, or engaging in an enjoyable activity. Shame, though, is a different story. There is evidence that people will explicitly procrastinate to avoid shame. Feeling shame about work you have not completed is likely to make the problem worse, not better, making it an emotion that is almost never helpful. Feeling bad about your lack of progress is likely to make it more difficult for you to stop procrastinating. So give yourself a break. Beating yourself up isn't gonna improve anything, and since you're reading this book now, you're already taking steps to avoid procrastination in the future. In my experience, the best way to deal with this is to find a way to break the task into bite-sized pieces, which lead to habits that lead towards success. Circling back to the Zygarnik effect, every time you complete one of these smaller tasks, you get to take that weight off your mind, and as each of these sub-tasks is finished, you're that much closer to completing a task overall. Take baby steps. Podcast guest Dr. B.J. Fogg, the founder and director of the Behavior Design Lab at Stanford University and the author of Tiny Habits, has been studying human behavior for more than 2 decades. What he's learned is that only 3 things can change a person's behavior long term. One is to have an epiphany, which a few people Very few people can summon on demand. Another is to change your environment, which is possible for nearly everyone but not necessarily feasible at any given time. The third is to, as Dr. Fogg puts it, take baby steps. I like the way this story illustrates the principle of small, simple steps. A king was watching a great magician perform his act. The crowd was enthralled, and so was the king. At the end, the audience roared with approval, and the king said, "What a gift this man has, a God-given talent." But a wise counselor said to the king, "My lord, genius is made, not born. This magician's skill is the result of discipline and practice. These talents have been learned and honed over time with determination and discipline." The king was troubled by this message. The counselor's challenge has spoiled his pleasure in the magician's arts. Limited and spiteful man, how dare you criticize a true genius? As I said, you either have it or you don't, and you most certainly don't. The king turned to his bodyguard and said, "Throw this man into the deepest dungeon." And he added, for the counselor's benefit, so you won't be lonely. You can have two of your kind to keep you company. You shall have two piglets as cellmates. From the very first day of his imprisonment, the wise counselor practiced running up the steps of his cell to the prison door, carrying in each hand a piglet. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, the piglets steadily grew into sturdy boards, and with every day of practice, the wise counselor increased his power and strength. One day the king remembered the wise counselor and was curious to see how imprisoned had humbled him. He had the wise counselor summoned. When the prisoner appeared, he was a man of powerful physique, carrying a bow on each arm. The king exclaimed, "What a gift this man has, a God-given talent." The wise counselor replied, "My lord, genius is made, not born. My skill is the result of discipline and practice. These talents have been learned and honed over time with determination and discipline. One of the only things that is likely to change your behavior is to make incremental progress. You really don't want to make dinner. Make something simple for your family to snack on while you cook dinner later. You're having trouble writing that big speech for the next month's conference. Just write the keynote to the speech now. You're overwhelmed by the amount of reading you need to do for your economics class. Set a goal for yourself of reading the first chapter. Like the wise counselor, you must take it one step at a time, one day at a time." What you'll notice in all of these scenarios is two things. One is that they present you with something achievable of on the way to reaching the championship of getting this job done. The other is that they all put you in a situation where you're likely to get even more accomplished. You're already in the kitchen now, so you might as well finish making dinner. You've gotten through the keynote and you're on a roll, so maybe it makes sense to draft some pages. The first chapter of economics text wasn't nearly as dry as it seems from the outside, and you already have the book open. You can handle a few more chapters. By breaking a task that you're procrastinating about into smaller pieces, the path to getting it done becomes clear. The best way to deal with the tension between what you want and what you've done so far to achieve it is to remember what the Zeigarnik effect teaches. You're not going to be able to ease your mind about this task until you complete it. So get yourself moving towards completion. Start somewhere, anywhere, even if you don't have the energy or the motivation to get the entire things done. Get started on it. Get started on getting it done. You'll be thankful for the relief. On autopilot. Small simple steps repeated lead to habits. Our habits are a core part of who we are. Various studies have shown that somewhere between 40 and 50% of what we do every day is the product of a habit. That means that half of our lives is governed by what scientists term automaticity. This percentage might sound high to you. It certainly did to me the first time I heard it. But consider how many things you do every day without really thinking about them. You brush your teeth while thinking about it. Without thinking about it, you check your phone at predictable intervals. You drive to the office and don't practically recall how you got there. You zip up your jacket, get a glass out of the cupboard, and click on the TV remote automatically. This, of course, is essential to how we conduct our lives. Could you imagine how overwhelming it would be if you had to think about every single thing you did? If even brushing your teeth requires some conscious level of calculation, you'd be exhausted by 10 in the morning. Without habit loops, our brains would shut down, overwhelmed by the minutiae of daily life. Writes Charles Duhigg in his best-selling book, The Power of Habit, people whose basal ganglia are damaged by injury or disease often becomes mentally paralyzed. They have trouble performing basic activities such as opening a door or declining what to eat. deciding what to eat. They lose the ability to ignore insignificant details. And one study, for example, found that patients with basal ganglia injuries couldn't recognize facial expressions, including fear and disgust, because they were perpetually uncertain about which part of the face to focus on. James Clear, author of the best-selling book Atomic Habits, says the habits you repeat or don't repeat every day largely determines your health, wealth, and happiness. Knowing how to change your habits means knowing how to confidently own and manage your days. Focus on the behaviors that have the highest impact and reverse engineer the life you want. All habits serve you in some ways, Clear told me. As you go through life, you face a variety of problems. You need to tie your shoes. Your brain is automating the solution to that problem. That's what a habit is. It's the solution to a recurring problem that you face throughout life, one that you've employed so many times that you can do it without thinking. If the solution doesn't work anymore, then your brain will update it. Clear identifies the habit loop as having 4 components: a cue, a craving, a response, and a reward. Using the example of turning on a light when you enter a room, the cue is walking into the room and finding it dark. The craving is feeling that there would be some value in the room not being dark. The response is flipping on the light switch, and the reward is the room is no longer dark. You can apply this loop to any of your habits, such as getting your mail when you come home from work. The cue is reaching your driveway or front door at the end of the day. The craving is hoping there's something in the mailbox. The response is going to the mailbox to find out, and the reward is getting the mail out of the mailbox. You probably didn't think about any of this until you actually had the mail in your hands. The habit loop: cue, craving, response, reward. Creating habits to automate essential parts of our lives is a fundamental streamlining technique that we do largely unconsciously, often to our benefit. Of course, we also automate all kinds of things that we'd probably be much better off not turning into habits. I'm sure you know some version of this. Perhaps the cue is walking past your kitchen pantry. The craving comes from the knowledge that your favorite chips are in the pantry and your innate desire to eat them. The response is that you go into the pantry, open the bag of chips and take out a big handful, and the reward is crunchy, salty, fatty deliciousness that doesn't benefit your health in any way. Our negative habits operate with the same level of automaticity as our healthy ones. Those chips are in your stomach before you've even had the opportunity to register that you were stuffing them into your mouth. Now, because you're in the process of becoming limitless, you know that perpetuating negative behavior is a drain on your superpowers. So how do you break bad habits, and just as importantly, how do you create new habits that will help you tomorrow getting in the habit? So that's it, guys. Hasta la vista.